Some people do not attack you with fists. They drain you with their presence. They don't shout. They smile. They don't harm your body. They corrupt your spirit, drop by drop. And still you let them close. 'Cause they wear no scars. 'Cause they speak in kindness. Because the world teaches you to doubt your intuition instead of listening to it. But what if the danger was not in the obvious? What if the most toxic person in your life is the one who makes you feel guilty even when you've done nothing wrong? You do not need to judge. You do not need to hate. But you must learn to recognize the 6 silent signs that someone next to you is poisoning your peace. There are people whose presence feels like a weight, not on your shoulders but on your spirit. They enter the room and nothing loud happens but something shifts. You feel your breath shallow, your focus scatters, your chest grows tight even though nothing has been said. It is as if the air around them steals a little of your life force. And yet, they smile. They ask about your day, they seem harmless. But you walk away from them drained, not lifted. Dull, not clear. Tired, not at peace. This is the first sign, the most subtle, the most spiritual. A person whose presence quietly empties you. Not through conflict or criticism, but through an energy that does not nourish. It depletes. You find yourself questioning whether it's them or you. You think maybe you're just being sensitive, maybe you're just tired, but if you look closely, the pattern is always there. After every interaction, you feel smaller, thin, simple. Something in you begins to fade, not because they take anything physically, but because their essence demands more than they give. They are like a black hole of attention, drawing everything towards themselves, your energy, your time, your peace, and offering nothing back. To walk beside someone should be like walking in nature. Silent, nourishing, even in stillness, you should feel more connected to yourself, not less. But these people pull you away from your own center, slowly, quietly, like water dripping on stone. It is never dramatic. That would make it obvious. Evil does not always come with horns and fire. Sometimes it comes dressed in concern, in politeness, in small, calculated moments that erode your strength until you forget how strong you ever were. Pay attention to how you feel after the conversation ends. Not the words, but the residue. A good soul leaves you lighter. A heavy soul leaves you fogged, uncertain, fatigued. You may find yourself lying down, unable to explain the sudden heaviness. You may overthink, replaying their tone, their questions, not because they were rude, but because they were laced with something unspoken. An agenda, a subtle mockery, a hidden competition. You sense it not with the mind, with the body, with the nervous system, the same way an animal senses danger even when the forest is quiet. And this is not weakness, it is not paranoia, it is awareness. It is the deeper part of you, what the ancient masters called the inner gatekeeper, trying to warn you. But the modern world has taught us to override this inner wisdom, to be nice, to be polite, to rationalize our unease. So we ignore the gatekeeper, we silence the voice, and in doing so, we welcome poison, mistaking it for rain. You may notice that these people never seem satisfied. No matter what you give, they leave you feeling like it wasn't enough. Not in words, but in tone, in the silence between the lines. You open your heart and they do not trample it, but they do not honor it either. They listen, but do not see. Their presence is not a mirror. Even in groups, their energy warps the room. Laughter becomes guarded, joy becomes tense. Everyone steps a little more carefully. This is not coincidence. This is not chemistry. It is spiritual interference. The Shaolin monks say, the energy of a person always reveals more than their actions. What they carry cannot be hidden. You may not know what it is, and so the question is not whether they've done anything wrong. It is not whether you can prove their harm. The question is simple: are you more yourselves when they are near, or less? That is the true measure. You owe no anger, no confrontation, no judgment, but you do owe yourself peace. And peace begins by honoring what your soul already knows, even if your mind is still unsure. There are people who don't enter your life to know you. They come to study you, to watch the rhythm of your breathing, the edges of your laughter, the small tremble in your voice when you speak of something sacred. They watch with intention, but not for connection. They are not trying to understand your soul. They are learning how to imitate it, how to mirror your life. Their kindness feels flawless, too aligned, too rehearsed. They know the right words to say, the right pain to pretend they've also suffered, the same dreams you chase. And they echo it all back to you like a reflection on still water. But water can be deceiving. A reflection is not the sky, it only pretends to be. In the early stages, their presence feels magnetic, familiar, as if you finally found someone who sees you, who gets it. You feel relieved, maybe even blessed. This kind of person listens deeply. They ask questions that make you feel special, unique, seen. But if you pause long enough, you might begin to notice something strange. The connection feels like a dance, but you are the one moving while they mimic your steps. There is no real music, only your rhythm reflected back. It is a performance, and performances have scripts. These people do not speak from their core. They adjust their expression based on your reaction. They smile when you do, they frown when you grow quiet. They shape-shift to match the temperature of your heart. But inside them, there is only calculation. No warmth, no seed of truth, only a desire to gain something. Your trust, your secrets, your weakness. They don't love what you love. They love that you love it, because that becomes their entry point. In ancient times, warrior did not fear the loud enemy on the battlefield. They feared the quiet one standing behind them, smiling. The one who had learned their language, walked beside them, shared their fire, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. Not with a sword, but with betrayal. That is how the mirrored one moves. Not to help, not to heal, but to gather, to extract, to mimic long enough to be accepted before the mask begins to slip. Sometimes you will see the truth in small fractures. They say they value honesty, but twist yours later. They say they dislike gossip, but listen too eagerly when others speak. They say they support you, but the support feels like surveillance, like they're taking notes. And when your back is turned, they use what they've learned, not to protect. These people do not attack, they erode. They don't destroy from the outside. They weaken you from within by pretending to be your reflection. The most dangerous liar is not the one who tells falsehoods. It is the one who tells your truth back to you as if it were theirs. And in doing so, confuses your sense of reality. You begin to share less without knowing why. You hesitate before speaking. You wonder if you're too much or not enough. And this confusion is not an accident. It is the quiet aftermath of someone who never intended to connect, only to copy. The monks say, when the heart is real, it does not need rehearsal. True connection is imperfect, messy, sometimes mismatched, but it is honest. It moves from its own rhythm. It does not echo. It sings, even when the notes are strange. So ask yourself, are they really meeting you or just mirroring you? Is the light you see in their eyes their own or a reflection of your fire? Listen carefully. Stillness reveals what performance conceals. A wolf in the forest does not announce itself with growls. It watches in silence, hidden in the stillness between the trees. It waits, it studies. Not every threat comes charging forward with anger. Some wear the skin of calmness. They move slowly, not because they are gentle, but because they are precise. In the same way, there are people who do not confront, do not attack, do not shout quietly, strategically. Like a river eroding the edges of a rock, their work is slow, but devastating. They do not start fights, instead they drop questions. They lace every comment with just enough doubt to make you wonder, what did he mean by that? Why would she say such a thing about someone I trust? It's never obvious, never enough to accuse, just enough to disturb, enough to shift the balance of your relationships so that you begin to stand not on solid ground, but on suspicion. These people operate through energy, not volume. Their poison is not injected, it's released like mist. You don't even realize it at first. You just begin to feel more alone, less certain of the people you once held close. Suddenly, a friend seems distant, a partner feels less safe, a mentor begins to sound critical, and you start to shrink into yourself, wondering if it's your fault, your perception, your flaw. But if you trace the thread, if you become still enough to observe, you will see the same presence quietly seated at the center of the web. Evil, when refined, does not scream, it whispers. It does not expose itself, it hides behind concern. I just thought you should know. I didn't want to say anything, but this is how it begins. The whisper of distortion, a seed planted in fertile ground. Not every seed is meant to grow, but when planted in the soil of insecurity, confusion, or past wounds, it takes root. And before you realize, you've begun to water it. You begin looking at others through the lens they handed you. A lens fogged with their bitterness, not your clarity. To understand this is not to become paranoid, it is to become awake. Awake to the patterns that follow in their wake. Conflict where there was peace, silence where there was once laughter. Walls rising slowly between people who once sat close. But when you look for the hand that built the wall, it's not visible. Because it wasn't built with bricks, it was built with suggestions, with timing, with absence, with subtle redirections of your trust. The wise do not need loud alarms to sense danger. They watch the ripple effects. They see how water moves after a disturbance, even if they never saw the stone drop. So too must we observe the waters of our life. Who is the one person always near when division begins? Who is the only one touched while everyone else drifts apart? You do not need to expose them. That is not your work. To confront someone who thrives in shadows is to enter their territory. Your power lies in awareness, in recognizing the pattern and stepping out of it, in reclaiming the clarity they tried to fog. Do not chase explanations. Do not try to prove your intuition to others. It is enough that you see it. Stillness will reveal what noise conceals. And when you see with clean eyes, there is no need to react, only to choose whom to trust, whom to keep at arm's length, and whom to release completely. Because there is a certain kind of person who does not hurt you with harsh words. Instead, they twist your own goodness until it becomes a burden. You find yourself apologizing even when you've done nothing wrong. You soften your voice not out of compassion, but out of fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being called distant when you fight to rest. With time, Guilt becomes your constant companion, not for your mistakes, but for your needs. Evil does not always attack directly. Sometimes it disguises itself as emotional debt. These people make you feel as if you owe them something, not because of what they've done for you, but because of what they've suffered around you. Their pain becomes a noose. Their disappointment becomes a mirror you're forced to look into. You begin adjusting your life, not to grow, but to manage their moods. You become responsible for their reactions, for their fragility, for their storms. They never say it outright, but you feel it. The weight of unspoken. And so, without realizing, you become smaller. You laugh less loudly, you speak less boldly, you begin to second guess your intuition, your joy, even your silence. And this is how the erosion begins. Not with violence, but with guilt, subtle, persistence, like a vine wrapping around a tree, not to snap it, but to slowly strangle the light out of it. True darkness does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers in a voice that sounds like love, like concern. It tells you that you are too much, that your boundaries are cold, that your truth is unkind. And because you are good, because you are open, because you want to do right, you listen. You start reshaping yourself to avoid discomfort. You trade authenticity for harmony. And slowly, your inner compass begins to spin. But ask yourself this: when did you begin to shrink in their presence? When did your spirit begin to hold its breast? When did your joy become something you had to defend? These are not signs of a healthy connection. These are signals from your soul. A quiet knowing that you are not being seen as you are, but as something to be managed, controlled, shaped. You may even begin to believe that the problem is you, that your awakening is arrogance, that your peace is selfish, that your desire to evolve is a betrayal. And this confusion is the mark of subtle manipulation. They do not bind you with chains, they bind you with shame. And shame is harder to escape because it disguises itself as your own voice. But the voice is not yours. It is an echo of someone else's discomfort. Someone who cannot accept your freedom because it reminds them of their own imprisonment. Someone who cannot celebrate your truth because they have built their identity around distortion. And so, to stay close to them, you must bend, you must twist. The monks teach that guilt is a useful signal until it becomes a leash. You must know when to sit with it and when to cut it. Not all guilt is sacred. Some guilt is manufactured, pressed into your hands by those who are threatened by your light. Because your light casts a shadow they do not want to face. So walk back to yourself. Without noise, without defense, without seeking permission. And notice, who makes you feel guilty for healing? Who makes you feel wrong for choosing peace? That is where the answer lies. Not in confrontation, not in blame, but in clarity, in walking with your head unbowed and your truth intact. Growth reveals what the shadows could not hide. As you rise, the masks around you begin to slip, not because you've changed, but because your light makes the concealed more visible. There are people who cannot celebrate your expansion, even if they once claimed to walk beside you. They are not happy when you heal. They are not proud when you become whole. Instead, they go quiet, withdraw, make backhanded remarks, or worse. They offer concern that sounds like care, but feels like a cage. You begin to hear words like, "Don't forget where you came from," or "Be careful not to get ahead of yourself." At first, these words seem harmless, maybe even wise. But if you listen with more in your ears, if you listen with your inner stillness, you'll sense the vibration behind them. It's not support, it's subtle resentment. Not protection, but possession. They were safe when you were smaller, manageable, dependent. But now, your peace unnerves them, Your strength reminds them of their stagnation. Your discipline shines a light on their distraction. And so their love begins to twist, it becomes conditional. Their encouragement, which once flowed freely, now feels delayed, filtered through jealousy. Their silence during your victories becomes louder than their applause ever was. You feel it when they change the subject after you share something good. You feel it when they minimize your efforts or highlight someone else's success the moment you speak of your own. These are not coincidences. These are spiritual cues, and they must be honored. The ancient teachings say, the truth of someone's soul is not revealed in your struggle, but in your rise. It is easy to find companions in suffering, but rare is the one who can walk beside you when you have nothing left to complain about. Because in your suffering, they felt equal. In your struggle, they felt needed. And so they try to re-enter your path through control, not through force, but through advice. Advice that discourages risk, that urges compromise, that calls your higher self idealistic. They frame your fire as a danger, your truth as rebellion, your evolution as arrogance. But it is not your duty to dim yourself for their comfort. You were not born to keep others from facing their own shadow. Real love, true companionship, celebrates your clarity, not just your chaos. A true ally does not confuse control with care. They do not demand access to every step of your journey. They do not lace their presence with guilt when you take space to evolve. They grow with you, or they bless your path as you walk alone. There is a kind of quiet liberation that comes from recognizing this. You stop explaining, you stop proving, you stop seeking validation from those who were only ever invested in a version of you that kept them comfortable. And when you do, their discomfort grows louder, their energy tightens, their words become sharp or more distant. This is not your failure. This is their fear. You do not need to return to the cage to make them feel safe. You do not need to lower your frequency so others can feel less insecure. The tree does not apologize to the seed for growing tall. The sun does not explain itself to the clouds when it rises. You were not created to remain small so others could stay asleep. It is a painful truth, but a liberating one. Not everyone who started with you is meant to finish with you. Some were only lessons, mirrors, tests. And when the lesson ends, the attachment must dissolve. Not with bitterness, not with blame, but with silence. And a deeper death forward. There is a quiet moment that comes before every self-betrayal. A moment so subtle, so easy to overlook that most people miss it. It is not a loud decision. It does not announce itself with anger or rebellion. It begins with a hesitation, a pause before saying no, a faint discomfort before agreeing to something your soul already refused. In that moment, you feel it, the friction before who you are and who you are pretending to be in front of them. And yet, you smile, you nod, you comply, because it is easier, because it avoids conflict, because deep down, you've been trained to choose peace around others, even if it means war within yourself. This is how the betrayer begins, not in one dramatic act, but in a slow erosion of boundaries. You begin to say yes to things that drain you. You hold your tongue when your truth wants to speak. You give more than is fair, more than is healthy, more than you have. And the ones who benefit from this, who see your sacrifice and grow stronger from it, rarely stop you. In fact, they encourage it, sometimes with silence, with expectation, with subtle disappointment when you begin to pull away. And so, to keep harmony, you return again and again, until one day you look in the mirror and no longer recognize who you've become. You are not the same. Your eyes are tired, your laughter is quieter, your presence feels stretched thin like a candle burning at both ends. but still you remain near them because you believe it's your duty, because they've convinced you that to care means to endure, that to love means to lose yourself. But this is not love, it is bondage disguised as loyalty. The ancient masters speak of this often. They say, "He who gives what is not asked loses both the gift and the peace." When you offer parts of yourself that your spirit did not agree to, even in the name of compassion, you are not giving freely, you are surrendering your essence. And those who seek control over you, who sense your softness but not your strength, will take more than they were ever meant to hold. This is not always done out of malice. Some people are simply empty, and when they find someone who overflows, they drink, not because they hate you, but because they lack their own center. They see you not as a soul, but as a source, something to be tapped, to be used, to be accessed when their own stillness feels unbearable. And if you're not careful, you become their medicine, their mirror, their mask. You begin shaping your tone, your choices, your life around their discomfort. And little by little, your freedom dissolves. It is not them who make you betray yourself. It is the part of you that has not yet remembered your worth. The part that confuses being needed with being loved. The part that thinks being chosen means being safe. But safety built on self-abandonment is not safety. It is a prison with soft walls. To walk away is not cruelty, it is return. To speak your truth is not aggression, it is remembrance. To say no is not rejection, it is a sacred act of self-protection. And those who are aligned with your spirit will not fear your boundaries, they will honor them. But those who are attached to your silence, your compliance, your diminishing, they will resist, and they will be right. You have changed, you have remembered. You no longer betray yourself to belong, you no longer twist your truth to be understood. You no longer bend so others don't break, and this frightens those who benefited from your forgetting. But it frees you, it restores the natural order, where giving is a choice, not a compulsion, where connection is mutual, not lopsided, where your presence is yours to offer, not theirs to demand. When you begin walking the path of self-remembrance, some will leave. Let them. Their absence is not loss, it is space. Space for you to breathe again, to hear your own voice, to stand in your own rhythm, without guilt, without apology, without disguise. You have walked with me through silence, through shadows, through the subtle weight of what is often unseen. Not every wound bleeds, not every enemy strikes. Sometimes the deepest harm comes from a gentle tone, a familiar face, a presence we once trusted. And still we remain open. Still we give. Because the heart does not close easily, because we are taught to doubt our inner knowing more than we question the behavior of others. But awareness, true awareness, is not cruel, it does not destroy, it simply reveals. You do not need anger to protect yourself. You do not need loud armor. You need clarity. The kind of clarity that comes not from judgment, but from stillness. When the pond is calm, the reflection becomes clear. In the same way, when your spirit is undisturbed, the intentions of those around you begin to show themselves. No effort is needed. There is a Zen teaching that says, when the flower blooms, the bees come uninvited. Your light will always attract those who need it, but not all who come are meant to stay. Some arrive to drink from your peace, others to disturb it. Your task is not to resist this. Your task is to discern and to remain rooted in who you are, even as the wind moves through your life. So I leave you with this. Do not betray your silence just to soothe someone else's noise. Do not trade your truth for a temporary peace. And when someone's presence asks you to dim. Let that be the signal, not to shrink, but to stand taller in stillness. Protect your peace as you would a sacred temple, not with gates or guards, but with wisdom. Walk gently, but do not walk blindly. The path will reveal who is walking with you and who only walks near you. Choose wisely and bow only where your spirit rises.